Great. Hi again, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Around the Town with Chuck. My name is Chuck Guglielmo, a weekly interview show where we talk with interesting people around the community. And today we're going to do two parts of the show here with Gene Winters. Many of you may know Gene Winters is a producer at Sports Time Ohio, but he does many other things that we're going to find out about as well. Gene, thanks for coming in.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
Gene coming in from long distance, so we're not going to just keep you here for 30 minutes. We're going to keep you here for at least an hour and a half or so.
Absolutely. This is great.
Gene, of course, everybody knows you, or some of our viewers should know you as a producer on the Drennan Live show on Sports Time Ohio, which is how old now?
We'll be starting our 12th year coming up on April 1st. So
12 years
'07
already.
was our first year.
And what, a couple of years in the new studio, or has it been longer than that?
We'll be doing our 4th year in our new studio, I believe.
4 years already.
It started, as time goes, it all just mixes together and you lose track of it. But I believe it's going to be year number 4.
Is that still in the WKYC building?
We're actually in the Huntington building downtown, the old BP building.
Okay.
So, Sports Time Ohio was at Channel 3. Fox Sports Ohio was down in Broadview off Route 82. Once the companies merged, they wanted everyone in one central location together. They finally found it in the Huntington building, so all the productions on the second floor, all the important people are up on floor 25.
Okay, that's where you're at, right?
Yeah, I wish, yeah. One of these days, I'll have those empty suits up there, so.
Of course, like I said, Gene produces Drennan Live, which was before that called All Bets Are Off. What made the name of change?
Just to fall inside of the Fox family, keep it uniform with everything else. Cavaliers Live, Indians Live, Drennan Live, and if you go to other states, their regionals would be, Blue Jackets Live, I guess they're in the state, but Tigers Live or Red Wings Live. Mm-hmm. So just to keep it within the Fox family, kind of uniform with everything else, all the talk shows are usually the host name with a live afterwards.
Of course, Drennan Live is kind of still on vacation until when? Soon, right?
Monday, the 25th, we come back, 3:30. We have normal shows Monday through Thursday the first week. Actually, I take that back. Wednesday, we follow an Indians game. They have their second spring training game that we're going to air on Sports Time Ohio, so we'll actually follow that game on Wednesday. But normally, Monday through Thursday, 4:30 to 6:30, leading into Indians Live and baseball.
Mm-hmm. That's a good thing. We can't wait for Cleveland
Finally.
Indians baseball. Two of the best shows on Sports Time Ohio. Number one, Cleveland Indians baseball, and then Drennan Live. Talk to us a little bit, Gene. Now, you've also done some radio. You've been with Bruce quite a while, haven't you?
Yeah, we started.
WKNR, was it?
Yes, back in 2001. That was my first job right out of school. So I was a morning board operator, and I would only work 6 to 9 a.m. So Bruce at that time was doing Indians post-game shows for KNR. He just left TAM to come over to KNR. So we really didn't cross paths. About 3 months in, instead of just working 15 hours a week, I was trying to find a little bit more time and try to get my foot in the door a little bit more. So I would work 6 to 9 Monday through Friday, come back on Friday nights and work 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. Mm-hmm. So then, obviously, the Indians played every Friday. So he would do the post-game shows on Friday. We started to, talk, communicate a little bit. Everyone would be out by 12:30. I would have the building to myself, work on some demos and things like that. But probably about 6 months after he first started doing the post-game shows, he was moved to morning drive. So that I was already established 6 to 9.
Sure.
So then we started our relationship there, and since '01 has been going pretty strong.
Yes, and I believe sometimes I hear you on 92.3 The
Yes.
Fan. Talk about that experience to actually take phone calls and stuff like that. Of course, you fill in once in a while for Bruce
Yes.
on Drennan Live as well.
Yeah, so a little bit different. Obviously with the Drennan, you have the national audience to entertain, or at least the way I look at it, at least the state of Ohio, I believe, is watching. But here, with the radio, just pop in here and there. Usually a holiday fill-in. So coming up, I'm actually on Saturday the 1st, coming up in about a week or so. But normally, fill in a morning show. I like to get in and out quickly. So come in 6, out by 10, and then still have the rest of my day to have in front of me. But yeah, they approached me probably 5 years ago, once they basically came into the Cleveland market and put together a second radio station. So, but it's fun. It's nice. I always tell Bruce, I don't see myself going every day as a talk show host, but once a month, once a week, I have no problem doing that, coming on.
You do a great job, though.
Well, thank you.
You do a real great, good job on that. When Sports Time Ohio first came about, or I should say All Bets Are Off, were they at the same time?
All Bets Are Off came a year after. So Sports Time Ohio created in '06, but at that time only had Indians games. When the games were over, they went dark. No commercials, no other programming, just a black screen.
Gotcha.
Then the replay would come back on and you'd have a game. So in '07, they wanted to go 24/7 all sports.
Okay, when All Bets Were Off came first with Bruce Drennan, correct me if I'm wrong, at the beginning, he always would talk about you, but we never saw your face on camera.
Yes.
Is that correct?
That is correct. So our studio at the time, we had 3 cameras that were all robotic. But how my area was, I had this shiny piece of glass in front where you can kind of maneuver it, but you get a bunch of reflection. So it took a while to tweak it a little bit. It took us about 3-4 months to get it just right. And then from there, I was able to be seen. But yeah, we did probably a good 4 or 5 months of just a random voice just appearing over the air.
I'm thinking about what Bruce used to say, though. He would tell a different story. You don't want to see him
Yeah,
on the
that's
camera.
right. Yes, and I always thought he was right at first, and then then it eased in.
He's quite the man.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, Bruce Drennan, he could be controversial.
Sure.
He could be very entertaining. Sometimes I think he's more of an entertainer than he is a sports talk show guy.
Absolutely.
Loves his baseball, loves his golf, loves his college sports.
Yes. Loves his movies.
And loves
Yes.
his movies. Yes. What's it like? What's your working relationship on the TV with Bruce Drennan?
Fantastic. I mean, we like any place. You're going to butt heads. You're going to disagree. You're going to have your arguments. And the way we look at it, when we leave at 6:30, 7 o'clock, you come back the next day and it's over. It's not something that's going to keep procrastinating all week long, or something that you keep dwelling on to make it, I don't want to say a hostile work environment, but where you don't get along. I mean, once we leave, that day's over with. We come back next day fresh. For the most part, maybe 3 times we've really had where we blew up at each other. Other than that, I mean, it's pretty much the respect level between each other.
Would that be after a show or before a show?
It could be during, before.
During?
Oh, sure.
During the commercials?
Oh, sure. And you've probably seen this too. I mean, usually the best shows are the parts that are happening during commercial breaks that aren't on the air. But yeah, it's very rare and far between. But yeah, there's times where, I have a direction in my mind, he sees it a different way. Yeah, we factor in Ashley Collins as well. So you have 3 people that have a view of it, but maybe not all seeing on the same page. So
more of a format issue rather than a sports debate.
kind of a little bit of both. Yeah, why is this story here? Why is this one? Yeah, right. Why is this one over here? So yeah, it all gets itself worked out and taken care of. But yeah, there's times, but for the most part, it's pretty simple. I mean, we start talking at 8:30 in the morning on a day of a show, trying to plan out the day.
Yeah. What was I going to say? I lost my train of thought. Oh, give us a little bit of scoops if you can. If you can't, you can't.
Sure.
When phone calls are coming in,
Yes.
like when Bruce is talking to somebody and then there's the next phone call, does he have an idea what that next person is going to talk about?
Not anymore. So back in our old studio, he would have a laptop on his desk. We would have one in the call screener area, and you would be able to type in, John from Cleveland talking about the Browns. Or I try to get our interns or production assistants that answer the phone to get a little bit more, because obviously Browns, that's so big. So is it Browns line, wide receivers, quarterbacks, whatever, just to give him a little bit more clarification on what they're looking for. But once we moved into the new studio, he has a ton of stuff laid all over the desk. To have another laptop there as well is just a little bit more clutter to add there. But you will see it here and there. But it will say on there, on the screen, name, location, what they want to talk about. A lot of times I'll tell him during a break, if the computer's not there, John in Cleveland, line 1. 2 is Steve from Sandusky, whatever. And he'll just write them down and go that way, and then I'll just have to whisper in his ear. If we usually cycle through the 3, if he goes pretty quick and it's not time for a break yet, then I'll just have to whisper in his ear what's coming up. But if I personally tell him, it's just name and location. If the computer's on the desk, he'll get a little bit more information.
It takes a lot of patience as well. I don't know how Bruce handles some of those phone callers, but he will hang up on someone.
Yes. Oh, and then you go back to the entertainment portion of it. That's what he loves. Those kind. He loves the
It's a
what people
ratings
call a kook job or whatever, and they'll come on and spew their nonsense, and he'll let it go for a little bit, but then get back to reel them in and get them into place.
What was the one, I'm sure you recall, about the shortstop Derek Jeter?
Oh yeah.
Wow, that was entertaining.
Yes, and we had another one this year, but back to the Jeter, it was in his final year. He's going on his retirement tour, and everyone's giving him gifts like he needs it, but everyone's giving him stuff as he comes around. And we had a guy from Sandusky that called in and wanted the Indians to trade for Jeter for the final 5 months or whatever it was, whenever the guy called, to play out the rest of his career as an Indian. And then we had this year a guy where Bruce kind of had the same reaction, where a guy back in May when Kluber had maybe 2 bad outings in a row. This is where he was coming off 30 fantastic outings in a row.
But he's going to remember the 2.
Yeah, but the guy Kluber had a rough week, so a guy called in and wanted to trade Kluber for some bullpen arms, and we had kind of the same conversation with Jeter or I should say, kind of reaction as the Jeter call for sure.
I like when he'll say so. Oh, Gene, why do you do this to me?
And I'm the one that gets blamed, and I'm not even talking to these people ahead of time, but it makes for some good TV.
Or he'll go, he's the guy.
Yeah, right.
I mean, that's the entertainment part of Gene. So how's this with Ashley Collins now? She seems to be moving up the ladder.
Yes.
I see her doing some sports report on WKYC as well.
Absolutely. So she's been bouncing around as much as she can. I mean, from going and doing reports for us at Berea or at Jacobs Progressive Field, to Cavs events. She's really come a long way in probably the 10 years. I don't think she wasn't with us right away when we started. It might have been that after that first year where we brought her on to start doing updates and giving her more of a role. But she does sidelines for high school games for both basketball and football. As you mentioned, Channel 3 lately is a fill-in there. But she keeps herself busy and absolutely has come a long way from when she first started.
Very knowledgeable.
Absolutely.
I think she went to Riverside?
Lake Catholic.
Lake Catholic.
So she's in that area, but went to Lake Catholic, then off to Kent State. She...
her social spotlight's a big segment that's very entertaining too.
And that's one of those things where, for me, it's easy because social media is now a part of my daily life. But for someone like Bruce, he doesn't have Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or anything. So to bring in another element, trying to bring in a younger audience helps. And obviously, it's right up Ashley's alley to go and find different stories. And as you probably know, 90% of the people that watch or listen to a show never call in. So this gives you another outlet where, if you're too shy or just don't have the interest or are afraid to get yelled at by Bruce, it's your easy way to get your message in and across.
The time slot, 4:30 to 6:30, especially during the baseball season, leads right into the Indian. Perfect time slot.
Absolutely. And when we first started back in 2007, we would go 3 o'clock to 6, and then they would have not Indians Live, but like a minor league or a tribe report or a minor league show or something to lead you in, so you had an hour worth of baseball before the pregame show, before first pitch, with the pregame show coming a half hour after. Mm-hmm. Then they decided we would go 3 to 6:30 to be the lead into the pregame show, and then it turned into just starting at 3:30 and going to the pregame. So if they were in the Central Time Zone, we may have to do a 4-hour show to lead into 7:30. But then once Fox bought it, they wanted that consistent time slot so people would know you're starting at this time, you're off at this time. So you're not trying to search around or bop around and hope that you would catch us live, because the show is replayed at midnight. So for our first year, a lot of people thought that midnight was the time slot that we were on. We had a big following of people coming home from second shift, flipping it on, and then realizing that it was taped.
Excuse me for jumping all over the place, because I'm so excited to have you here. I'm trying to get everything in, trying to remember this and all that stuff. What are some of the other popular shows? I know the Jimmy Hanlon golf show is very popular, and Beer Money seems to be pretty popular with Jensen Lewis. Another guy, I love Jensen Lewis on Indians Live. I really do.
Yeah, nothing against Jason Stanford was a staple for a long time, and now a pitching coach down with the in the Atlanta Braves organization. Mm-hmm. So, when they comboed him and Al and even Jason together for that 1 year, I mean, it was just a matter of time. I remember going back to Winter Haven in It would have been '08, our first spring going down there. And even then, in '08, Jensen knew this is what he wanted to do. He wanted to be a broadcaster, so he did many different angles, was on a number of those shows. Absolutely.
So when he's in the
Yes.
booth with Underwood and Manning,
Yes.
he does extremely well.
Yeah, and then, as you mentioned, being able to be versatile to come out and do a Beer Money or an interview show that he didn't do it this year, but in past we would go to Tribe Fest and he would be the one to interview the players coming off, or he filled in for Andre Knott a couple of times, in the dugout doing those kind of interviews and in-game hits. So very versatile. So Beer Money, the golf shows with Jimmy Hanlon, you have 18 holes, you have the new one, Pin Shot, which kind of resembles to me a Beer Money, where you get 3 shots and the closest one to the pin goes out and you win. So keep wagering things, a sleeve of balls or golf bag or whatever it is, to win that ultimate prize of getting the hole-in-one.
How do the college sports do?
Good. We have plenty of Mount Union, Akron, Kent State. They have a couple of shows. Baldwin Wallace, we air a couple of their games. Ashland is big on Sports Time Ohio as well. But yeah, there's always that outlet for college sports. So absolutely, they do fantastic between the live games that we do for them, or tape delayed, I should say, and their specialty programming shows too.
Another thing I like that you guys do to get me through these winter months is you replay Indians baseball.
Yes.
And they're all wins.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You find the best games throughout the year and get
Who
those
selects
back.
those? You?
I have a little bit of say, not as much, but the pregame, postgame producer, game producer, then a couple of people in our office, they'll make a list down, and it's kind of like a vote. 1 through 10, these were the best ones of the year, submit them back, and then you start trying to get them down into a 2-hour window or a 3-hour window, depending on where you're trying to slot it in the day. But yeah, starting usually when the calendar changes, when you get into the new year, you'll start getting those Indians games on to get you into spring training mode. And then I think we have 8 spring training games this year.
Saturday being the first one.
Saturday being the first, yeah. So we might actually pick up a couple more, because not only do we have, I shouldn't say have to, but not only the ones that we produce, but we can pick up games from other Fox regionals and air them on Sports Time Ohio as well.
In the past, Gene, Bruce would, before an Indians home game, sometimes do his show live from the press box at
Yes.
Progressive Field. That does not happen anymore.
Not as much anymore. Yeah, we find specialty days where we go out there. So obviously the home opener is always one that we get locked in for sure. But then we try to find just select series here and there where you get out there and do it. Not to say that they were getting stale, because obviously the atmosphere, the backdrop, the live batting practice always was a unique thing for that. But when you kind of cycle in the same guest when you're on a 10-game homestand or 7-game homestand, whatever the case may be, I don't want to say that it gets stale, but hearing from the same people makes it a little bit old. So we try to pinpoint select series now to go out and actually spotlight and showcase the Indians or their personnel.
One thing I like that Bruce does when the opposing team comes in, he'll try to find somebody from the opposing team to get a
Yes.
preview of that team. Usually it's one of the main broadcasters
Yep.
or a writer. And I'll never forget the time in the press box. You may remember this too. He was talking with Yankees broadcaster Susan Walton.
Yes.
And nothing gets by Bruce.
Oh.
And I said, we're going to have an argument here. Do you remember when she said, they were arguing big market versus little market, and she says, well, maybe the little market doesn't deserve a team. That got by him.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Unbelievable.
And it was funny because it was the next day when it finally clicked, and it might have even been on the drive home, because there are sometimes, like I said earlier, usually 6:30 we're done and we won't talk to each other till the next morning. But then there's certain days where something might stick or finally register or come back to them like, what, I want to touch on this a little bit more tomorrow. And that was one of those things, like, I think I missed it. Did I? Yeah. And then you question it a little bit. Then I'm starting to think, like, did I miss it too? Or did I catch it? Or did I hear her wrong? And then you go back and watch it and like, you know what? Yeah, now we have this talking point for tomorrow. But yeah, absolutely. She's always an interesting one to have on. Because again, being a pioneer of the business, she's not afraid to speak her mind either. And then when
Love
you,
her accent.
yes, when you get the two of them together, it's always entertaining.
Yeah, it was very entertaining, and I thought, oh, we're gonna have an explosion.
Yes,
And
yeah.
then Gina, I have to go to a commercial.
Yeah, right. And then you come back and and then I always hate that too, where, if something slips by, you always like to have the person there to be able to defend themselves if, you take issue with something. And I always hate that when we come back maybe a day later or 2 days later and try to rehash it again, then they're not here. And it's like, well, I wish we would have caught it at that point and been able to discuss it with them. But
Gene Winters, producer of Sports Time Ohio, my guest. Gene, I think we're blessed in Cleveland. I'm gonna talk announcers for a minute. As far as play-by-play men go, I'm going to name 3, and I'd like you to comment on all 3. And I think it's one in each sport. I think they are just outstanding in what they do. Let's start with WTAM's Tom Hamilton. Does it get any better?
no. And that's the part.
He can make a 9-1 game sound like it's
right. And he has that leeway too, where he's not shy to rip on the players, your own players. Where
Right,
a lot of teams are, well, you got to be nice, you got to be this, you got to. And for him, I've been doing it for 25, 30 years. Here's what I see. I'm going to rip the umpires. I'm going to rip the players if they're not playing well. I'm just going all out and take it for what it is.
He'll rip himself if he makes a mistake.
Absolutely. Him or even Rosie, whatever the case may be. But yeah, he is fantastic. And you hear it all the time, but off the air, he is just fantastic.
Yeah.
One of the nicest guys you'll ever meet.
Yeah,
personable. He'll talk with anybody and everybody, and he'll make time for you. And
I was fortunate to see him at Tribe Fest this year.
Oh yeah, yes, and he'll take the time. He'll stay until everybody that has their question is done. I remember a couple years ago when his son was within the Indians organization and trying to make his way. Nick, yeah, I believe he's still with the Phillies now. He out of baseball, but went into kind of a front office type role, trying to work his way, to the general manager, to the scouting, those type of things. But there were many times where we were trying to get Nick on during spring training, and we wanted to have him on at the same time. And Tom was out doing this, or Nick was finishing up this little part, and where they couldn't, where we just couldn't connect with both of them. And then all of a sudden, one day we're not even planning on them, and here they both come like, hey, sorry we couldn't make this work, but we're both here if you're ready to go. All right, fine, sit down and let's knock this out. A lot of times you don't see that. I mean, you miss your opportunity. Can't do it. We'll have to try again next year, or we'll try again next month. But they wanted to make it work, and it's just he's fantastic. You can't get anybody better.
And of course, he learned from one of the best in Herb Score.
Yes, absolutely.
Herb Score was well loved in Cleveland.
Yes.
And of course, now he works with Jim Rosenhaus.
Right. And
5-6 years now, or has it been longer?
I think it's been even a little bit longer than that. I mean, I think we were still in Maniac years when Jim came from Buffalo to join Tom.
Who's also good, but I think I get spoiled listening to Tom.
Yes, yeah, absolutely, and that's the disadvantage where
Jim seems not as upbeat.
Yes, and it always seems where you're waiting for that signature moment of the game. And again, nothing against Jim,
Right,
he's
I love
fantastic,
Jim.
but it always falls in his inning.
Yeah.
Where you're waiting for this thing to happen, and there it is. But yeah, Jim, coming from Buffalo, worked with the Indians minor league system there before they flipped down to Columbus. But yeah, he's been great as well with his time with the Indians, and even before, knowing a lot of these guys as they came through the system, as they were fringe major leaguers or waiting for that opportunity. So he had the opportunity to work with a lot of these guys before the move to Columbus.
And on the TV side, of course, we've got analyst Rick Manning, who's
Yeah.
been with Sports Time Ohio and the Indians since the early 90s?
Absolutely, yeah. Back to, what was it, Sports Channel or Sports Vision, whatever it was called back in the 90s, yeah, when his playing career was over, and kind of the evolution of sports TV, where before it was only a select couple of games, or maybe only a Saturday or Sunday game of the week, and then all of a sudden you go from 26, 30 games a year, all of a sudden you have 160 of them on. So right place at the right time for Rick, and he's another guy that he's not afraid to say what he's thinking. I mean, it's I wish they would have bunted. I wish they would have done this, but it's not that kind of baseball anymore.
I was going to say, correct me if you think I'm wrong, he's a no-nonsense
Oh
kind
yeah,
of guy.
yes,
on the
yeah.
team.
he has his vision. He knows from, being a high first round draft pick from when he was trying to bust through and make it and finally get his opportunities to bouncing around and trying to stay in the league. He sees it and, draws back to those experiences and knows exactly what it takes to get to a certain level and stay at that level. So many of those years from, kind of a little bit with Eric Wedge to into Maniac and maybe even the first year of Terry Francona, where you're trying to work and identify guys. It was I don't want to say a struggle for Rick, but that's where you were able to see kind of the man, what kind of maybe manager he would wanted to be if he was in that kind of role, kind of teacher or coach even, where you were trying to deal with some of those younger guys.
And when you look at Matt Underwood now, he's worked with Tom Hamilton in the radio booth. He's come over to Sports Time Ohio. Who did he be? Oh, John Sanders.
Yes. Yep. So when John went back to Pittsburgh, that's where he was originally from, commuted a lot to come back and forth to do Indians games.
Is he doing Pirate games?
He does select. I don't think he has a full schedule anymore. Kind of ease in. I'll do 20, 30 games a year and kind of enjoy the rest of
John was there in time for all the big power teams.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, perfect timing with the Browns going away, the Indians building it the right way under John Hart and Shapiro, and having a lot of good years together. But Matt, I started with locally at Channel 5 up here in Cleveland as a sports director, sports anchor, and then kind of worked himself into the Indians radio, as you mentioned. And then once that opening came, slide right in. And I've talked to Matt a couple of times. Last year we took that 6-7 hour drive to Cooperstown together for when Jim Thome went in. So we had a lot of time to catch up and get to know each other. Just seeing him here and there or sending him a text to come on the show, you miss some of that. And the many years that we went down to spring training together, instead of renting hotels for everybody, everyone would just stay in a house together. So you get a week to get familiar with some of these guys, but you really don't talk. How'd you get started? How did this work for you? Were you at the right place at the right time? Those kind of questions. And during that 6 hours, got to know Matt very well. And he'll tell you he was again one of the guys that were at the right place at the right time when the opportunity presented itself. Be able to just slide in and hold on to it.
I had the opportunity with our television station to interview Matt Underwood in the locker room at Progressive Field, and it was very, 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 very nice.
Yeah, absolutely.
A complete gentleman.
Yes. Yeah. Again, another one that's fantastic. All the guys that you're probably going to mention that we've already run through are all fantastic. They're all approachable. They're all interested to give any knowledge that they can to help you out. It's not like, well, I'm worried that you're going to take my job, so I'm not going to say anything. I'm going to clam up. I'm just going to be, a robotic answer. They give you what you need, what you want, and they're on their way.
Super L. Pulowski, what can you say about Super L?
Yes.
Except Jensen likes to put them down every now and then, especially on the scoreboard when they're picking their players to click.
Yes. Yeah. And that's part of that relationship that they have together. Yeah. They know what buttons to push at the right times. And I just got done working with Al either last weekend or 2 weekends ago. We were doing a CSU game. Channel 43 locally picked up a couple of CSU games, so I was able to produce that. And Al, of course, has been the voice of Cleveland State basketball for 10, 12 years now. So on their TV games, he'll just slide over and do that. But again, he's another fantastic one to work with, another good one to pick the brain of, because for him, it was going from a scoreboard host at Progressive Field to...
That's right. I forgot about that.
Yeah, when
I remember that.
Cleveland Force used to be here, the indoor soccer team. He was the voice of that. So,
that's right.
A lot of small jobs that he had to take to get to where he is at now.
John Carroll grad.
Yes.
And Super L. He is everything, but he is everything super.
Absolutely. And when you look at from fill in time at ESPN where you would call sumo wrestling or the Little League World Series or whatever, just a versatile talent that, I think it's kind of overlooked because I don't want to say you pigeonhole him, but you see him the most doing Indian. So it's like, well, he's just a baseball guy. But then when you see the resume that he has, he's a great one to have around.
Like Ashley, he too does some sports on WKYC.
Yep.
Sports report taking over for Dave Chudowski.
Yeah, now that Dave moved into the morning slot, with Donovan and his schedule, it's a little bit easier for him right now without the Browns going on. But soon enough, he's going to be out traveling again, and that's where Al or Ashley or whomever will just slide right in.
Moving over to the broadcasters from the Cavaliers. Fox Sports Ohio, but sister station
Yes.
of Sports Time Ohio, so we can talk about
Oh,
Fox
yes.
Sports Ohio.
Yes.
Fred McLeod, he's outstanding too,
Yes,
isn't he?
absolutely. And, for a guy that started his career here, then went to Detroit for 25, 30 years, then to be able to come back here, and I don't want to say close out his career because I don't want him to go anywhere anytime soon, but to be able to put that nice little bow to come back to the community that you started and where you grew up and what you know, it's nice for him to do that. And obviously, the 4 great years that they had the last couple of years for the Cavs, or even that first go around when LeBron was here and Fred came back, just a wealth of basketball knowledge. It's great to work with him. I do a lot of Cavs on Fridays, Saturdays when Drennan's off, or when I have a free day, able to go in and work on some of the Cavs lives. Just another fantastic guy. He's a guy that kind of reminds me of Bruce. He has in his mind what he wants to get accomplished, what he wants to get across, the best way to do it. And again, he has fun with it too, where it's not just, this game's, the Cavs are down 20. What are we going to talk about? You get that exciting dunk or that quick 4-0 run, and it turns that 16-point deficit into an exciting 16-point deficit.
Sure.
Instead of just drugging through and we got 12 more minutes to get through somehow. And, he keeps it fun and entertaining.
Didn't Fred start a WJW channel?
Yes. Yep. It did some Indians games. And of course, with a little bit of the Cavaliers, and filled in that way. And then, had that opportunity to go over to Detroit and do basketball.
And then, of course, his partner, Austin Carr, another entertainer. To
Yes.
me, he's more of an entertainer than an analyst.
Yes.
He'll cry right with the team, won't he?
Oh, absolutely. And, for a guy that has been with the team since the 70s, you have that attachment. And a guy that probably could have left a couple of times, but, was so welcomed and accepted during his playing career. Why leave? I mean, the opportunity was here to stay. You love the community. You love everything that has to go with it. But as you said, he'll get into it. He'll get emotional. Yeah. I mean, I still remember when I was working at K&R. This was, I think Bruce may have just left, and I was working with Kenny Rhoda at the time, and we were doing the the draft lottery show the year that the number 1 pick came up for LeBron. And we were doing a remote show at a restaurant, and Austin Carr was there. And the second that the Cavaliers landed that number 1 slot, everyone's cheering. Austin's crying. I mean, it was just not because he was sad. I mean, just the pure excitement and the enjoyment, and all the hard years that he has had as a member of the Cavaliers to land that and know what was coming. Probably didn't think LeBron was going to be LeBron coming out of high school, but you knew that talent, having that number 1 pick. You had many of opportunities and different angles to go, and obviously you win.
Well liked in Cleveland, Austin Carr, and of course his signature phrase, "Get that weak stuff out
yes,
there," right?
Absolutely, yeah. And it's funny, you'll do conference calls before as they get ready for that night's broadcast, and you'll get some of those mixed in on a conference call. It's not even a game going on, but he'll get some of that in when he doesn't like one of the suggestions that might come his way.
Mm-hmm. And then on the radio side, we have John Michael. I don't know too much about John. What do you know about him?
Started with the Lake Erie Monsters, but I don't think they were called that at the time. The minor league hockey team, which is known as the Monsters now, started here, went down and started working for the Blue Jackets for Fox Sports Ohio, kind of a ringside reporter, did a couple pregame, postgame shows. But as his time with the Monsters, obviously had a relationship with Dan Gilbert, with the Cavaliers. On days when the Monsters wouldn't play, he would just go up, where the press level or somewhere where he was out of the way of everybody, and just do some mock games, call the action as it was going on. Obviously, everyone knew at some point Joe Tate was going to have to retire, so it was smart on John's part to take advantage of the opportunity that was there, go out and call a couple of games, get yourself familiar with the fast pace of hockey, and it kind of has translated for him 4, 5, 6 years now that he's been the voice of the Cavaliers.
Yeah, Joe Tate, though.
Oh.
What a man, huh?
Yeah.
Also teamed up with Bruce Drennan on WUAB for Indians baseball. Matter of fact, you guys brought the two together a few years back during the game.
I want to say 2008, maybe, somewhere in that.
It's not been that long
I remember it because it was one of those years where Ohio State played USC. And obviously, Bruce was all panicked because USC-Ohio State was an 8 o'clock game. Joe Tate and Bruce had first pitch at 7 o'clock, and it was Indians and Royals, and this was part of that Maniac.
Wasn't that a day-night doubleheader?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. So they were obviously begging for the first part, so that way they would be able to get off and watch their college sports. But they ended up getting that 7 o'clock game, and yeah, it was nice to get the two of them together. I was just actually watching, going through a couple of things. I'm working on a couple of shows that are going to come out around the All-Star break. Just watching that 81 game, the perfect game again with Bruce and Joe calling it against Toronto for Lenny Barker, and just seeing some of those. You hear the story so many times, but to be able to go back and watch it and see how it all played out, it was pretty interesting as well.
You could still hear Joe Tate saying, "Fly ball,
Yes.
Manning in center."
Yes.
And Manning jumping up in the air and all that.
And then, I don't want anything to happen to Bruce, but I'm hoping that when he eventually goes, I get that scorebook that he has framed in his office. From that game, I believe it's the middle of the 7th was the last inning he called, then went down to the dugout,
Yes.
waiting for it to happen. So his scorebook stops from when he left. Nothing
Yes.
else is filled out on it. It's in this nice frame in his den, so I'm hoping that I get my hands on that.
I think he's told us that story, and he was the first one to grab
Yes.
Lenny Barker.
Yeah,
after
you
that
can see
game.
John Tellish, who works at Channel 8, still here, has been doing it for 40 plus years. A couple of the other anchors that were here at the time in the 80s, you could see them trying to go up, and Lenny pushing him away, the security guards pushing him away, Bruce trying to get Lenny's attention, and he had that pact with those guys that if it happened, you're coming to me first, and then you can go and do the rest of it. And the week prior to that, they almost had one in Toronto with Burt Blyleven, which ended up, I think it was the 8th inning that it ended up dropping. But it was funny because I remember Bruce telling the story that in Toronto, I don't remember who the left fielder was at the time, but they took him out for a defensive replacement. And the guy that they put in was not the best left fielder. And of course, the very first ball came. It was it ended up being an error, which still had the no-hitter intact. But then on the very next play, Blyleven ended up giving up a hit. And I think it was a one-hit win for him. But then a week later, here in Cleveland, they ended up completing the no-hitter, or I should say perfect game for Lenny Barker.
John Michael's partner, of course, a former great Cavalier, and Jim Jones.
Yes.
When I think of him, I think what could have been in the 70s, the injury that we'll never know, but
Right.
it certainly didn't help.
Yeah, absolutely. And, and that's the hard part of it, with the sports, for me, reading about some of those teams that were, throughout the 70s, but that miracle year for them. I mean, to be able to go through and, take Washington all the way to the brink, and, just a fantastic, maybe the first signature moment for the Cavaliers franchise. And then they had to wait, until the Price Doherty teams really to have another one of those moments. And of course, LeBron, trumped all of those that happened. But yeah, with Jim and Austin and Campy Russell that works with us over on the Fox side as well. I mean, just that team that they were able to put together with Bill Finch leading them. I mean, that was a nice way to kind of get your franchise going, with your 5th, 6th year of existence, to have that moment.
Going back to the Indians for a minute, I forgot one broadcaster there, her sideline reporter, Andre Knott.
Yeah.
Another one of those guys I classify as an entertainer.
Yes.
When he's doing those reports.
Yeah, right.
And how many water drenchings is he?
Water, the sunflower seeds, the egg that Trevor Bauer cracked on his
Do you
head.
think that bothers him when he's doing an interview and they're throwing the flower seeds?
I don't think
sometimes
anymore.
wonder. Oh,
I
you
don't think anymore. I think the first go around, I maybe the first year, 6 months, I would think so. I think it would probably be a distraction. You can kind of see too.
Is that Cookie throwing them out?
Oh yeah.
I thought it was Cookie.
Absolutely. And then there's certain games where they'll put them down the right or left field line, depending on where you're at, a little bit further away from the dugout, so that way he could get his message across. But I think now, it kind of just rolls off. I mean, I think he expects it now. So if they didn't do it, I think he would be a little bit lost, waiting for something to happen. But Andre and I mean, we started together back at KNR in 01 together.
Good man.
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, him going to TAM kind of started to open up my career a little bit, where I was able to get more on-air opportunities once he left. Not that he was blocking me, but in that time we had about 6 guys that were 25 or under, and we would rotate Saturday shifts. So once he left, it kind of opened up more opportunity, where you're not going every 6 weeks when you were on, to maybe once a month or once every other week. So, but he has had a fantastic career, from starting as a producer to doing Brown sidelines to hosting shows. I still work with him on Red Zone shows on Sports Time Ohio. once the baseball season's over for him, he'll come and do those Brown shows, and I get to work with him there. But
On the Red Zone.
yeah,
Another popular show, by the way.
yeah, absolutely. But yeah, I mean, he's a guy that 15 plus years, we've worked together or worked side by side, and just another fantastic guy too. And I think the good part for him too is having that family now, kind of has brought him back, and you get that different perspective that maybe he didn't have back when he was 25, 30 years old, where now you're a little bit older and you know what to expect.
Do you think Andre enjoys the Indians more than the Browns?
Yes. I think if you would have had Indy winning Browns teams, maybe it would be a little bit different. I know that 07 year he talks about a lot. I mean, you go 10-6 and somehow miss out on the postseason that year, but he had a lot of down 4-12, 3-13, 5-11 years. So for him to be able to be with a winning organization, I mean, really when he took over, I think it was the last year of Maniacta, but all 5 years of Francona. So I mean, you can't discount that. I mean, that has to be thrown. I mean, all the World Series, the playoff games. I mean, traveling with the team that 16 postseason year probably
what a ride.
Is really nothing that probably trumps that for him, unless he was working for the Cavs that year.
Yeah, what a ride. Let's go to the, as you can tell, I love announcers. I like to talk about announcers. I like to hear other people see what they think. Browns radio, Jim Donovan, can you get... He's excited when the team wasn't winning.
Right.
And this year he had a chance to really be excited. He's the man, isn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, you won't find a nicer guy. Where you work with him, I get to do some red zone stuff with him as well. And you can't find a nicer guy. I mean, he has the passion for a guy that came from New England, really has adopted the Cleveland lifestyle, the Cleveland mentality, what the people want to hear, what they expect to hear. And he's another guy that he doesn't care. If he sees something that he doesn't like, or that's not, maybe the company line, he's not afraid to say it. He's going to tell you that this was the wrong play, this was the wrong thing, this was the wrong player you drafted, this was the wrong move that you made. He's going to let you know, and I don't want to say he doesn't care, but he's going to get that message out there that this was the wrong thing to do. But he's another fantastic guy to deal with, and for a guy that was able to do the Olympics. I mean, he was on the U.S. team for the women's soccer, being able to call that game in the Olympics, to doing NBC when they used to have the football rights. I mean, all the great things that he has been able to accomplish in his career, and almost having a near-death experience to be able to now come back. And as you mentioned, I mean, now with the Browns on possibly the cusp of being back to the late 80s again, I've talked to Jimmy a number of times, and he always plays it through in his mind of, I'm out walking the dog in the morning, or I'm out working in the barn, or I'm out doing this, and I'm calling in my head a Browns AFC championship game, or I'm calling the Browns winning the AFC North, because it was always so far away with some of these teams. Now it's here, and all these scenarios that he has ran through his head over the last 20 years, we might finally be able to get one of those out.
Did Jimmy Donovan, a few years back, work some select games for the NFL on the network?
Yes, yep. He had, for the longest time, back in the late 80s, he was actually teamed up with Chris Collinsworth when he left. And those are some interesting stories that Jimmy can share, because obviously Chris didn't care. I mean, this was a guy that was a former player that went right into the booth. So he would do his, the football show that was on, it's on Showtime now. It used to be on HBO. It was like the round table where Chris would just go out and just bash everyone. And then on Saturdays, they would have to go into a locker room or go into a production meeting and meet with the head coach. And there's Chris, who just got done bashing these guys, and Jimmy's trying to get information. It made for some uncomfortable times from what Jimmy would say. But yeah, he's been able to do just about everything that a broadcaster would want to do. And the thing is, he's probably a bigger hockey fan than anything, but not having hockey here.
Did not know that.
Yeah, growing up in Boston. I mean, he had very good Bruins teams when he was younger.
Is that his favorite sport?
Oh, I would think so. I don't want to speak to him, but I would say I'm 90% sure hockey's his favorite.
Jimmy Donovan also called a year of Indians baseball for Sports Time Ohio, didn't he?
Yeah, we would do, I want to say about 20 select games on KYC, and those games that ended up on KYC, he would come in.
Did he like that?
Oh, absolutely. Yes, absolutely loved it. And I think he used to do minor league baseball at one point through his career. So to get back in there and be able to call games. And I think it was the '07 season when he got to do a lot of them. Obviously, that was the year the Indians probably should have won the World Series, being up 3-1 on Boston before they were able to come back and win. And then, of course, sweep Colorado in that World Series. But, just that excitement of that year and maybe some of that, pinned up excitement that he had for the Browns, able to finally get it out covering the Indians.
Jimmy's partner, of course, on 92.3, The Fan, the home of the Browns.
Yes.
Doug Deacon, one of the most lovable guys, one of the greatest Browns players.
Yes.
What can you say about Doug Deacon?
Nothing. I mean, the guy is even better. And, for a guy that, I don't want to pigeonhole him, but in an older generation, is a guy that will go out and text, and not that he has social media and things like that, but he keeps up with, interview requests that way, or a question that you might have. You don't have to give him a call. You can just send him a quick little text, and he'll get back to you. But he's fantastic too. I mean, for as you mentioned, a guy that was Joe Thomas before Joe Thomas was here, and what a lot of us know is the greatest offensive lineman. You could make that case for Deke being the greatest offensive lineman in Browns history. A guy that came over as a tight end. Sam switched him off to a tackle and had a fantastic career until Joe came and took his number, took his position, and took basically all his records in Browns history.
Outside of Cleveland broadcasters, do you have a favorite broadcaster in baseball, basketball, and football? Whether it's radio or TV?
For baseball, and we kind of touched on her earlier, but I love John Sterling and Susan Waldman for the Yankees. I know
Yankees win!
Yeah, people in New York hate the two of them, but it's that entertainment factor. I want to be entertained while I'm listening, and those two absolutely do that. I like Matt Vasgersian, who does the baseball for ESPN.
MLB Network, too.
Yes. Obviously, I think the one that all of us, I shouldn't say all of us, a lot of people in my generation, John Miller and Joe Morgan doing Sunday Night Baseball. I mean, that was a staple for so many years until those moves ended up being made.
He's out with the Giants now,
Yes.
John Miller, right?
Yep, doing the
Used
Giants
to do the
games.
Orioles.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. So then, when he was doing Sunday Night Baseball, he'd still do Baltimore, and then the later years of Sunday Night Baseball was with the Giants, and then would come in and do that. But he was always one that I enjoyed. Michael Regai was one that I enjoyed for both college sports and obviously Cavaliers. I'm trying to
Is he
think.
the one that's bring it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he had the many early years of
He's filled in
LeBron.
for Bruce a few
Yes,
times.
yes, and
He's an entertainer too.
right. Yeah, he's very good at both the talk show part of it and
You gotta have
and
that,
the
don't
play-by-play.
you?
Yeah, and it's always nice to have that extra, that extra gear, that extra thing in your tank where you can fall back on if some opportunity presents itself. You gotta be versatile to take on both of those. But trying to think, basketball wise, Dan Shulman, who does a lot of college for ESPN.
Toronto guy.
Yeah, I love him. His baseball was fine. I didn't truly enjoy him on Sunday Night Baseball, but I think his basketball with Jay Billis is fantastic. I'm very interested to see tonight with Duke, North Carolina, how the two of them do together. But yeah, Dan Shulman is one of my favorite basketball guys. For
Two
sure.
quick things and then we'll end this first
Sure.
part. Entertaining announcers. Do you like the announcer that says, "You can put it on the board," although retired now? I
Yeah,
think.
Hawk Harrelson. He's doing, I want to say maybe 20 White Sox games, only home games now. But he was a guy that, I don't know. I like the catchphrase. I didn't like the call of it, but maybe if I was a White Sox fan or watched more of them, maybe. But he always rubbed me the wrong way because Bruce and him had a relationship from his time playing and when Bruce was calling games. But he came into the booth one day when we were doing the show at Progressive Field, and it was kind of like, all these teams are better than you guys, and the Indians are just the bottom feeder. They're no better than a AAA team. The whole team, community, everything just stinks. And I think it was a year that the Indians ended up beating the White Sox, and I want to say it was Maniacs his last year. So the Indians were in the running for a playoff berth, maybe the division till end of July, early August, and they ended up falling off. But I never forgot that. You kind of go back to those things that stick in your mind, and it was just the way he rubbed Cleveland and tried to rip on us a little bit. That always sat there for me, and it kind of soured me against them, even though we would have them on every year, or anytime the White Sox were in. But after that, we kind of started going to the Steve Stone route, another local guy that called games for the White Sox. We started going that route instead of having Hawk on after that.
Personally, for me, I loved Ernie Harwell of the
Yeah.
Detroit Tigers on WJR.
Yep.
Who I really don't like, I don't like Joe Buck. I just don't.
Yeah, and he's kind of hit or miss with me. Sometimes he doesn't bother me, but then sometimes it's just like, why? Why are we going this way? Why can't you just, I don't know. I know a lot of people had problems with him in the 16 World Series, playing up the Cubs and that excitement and all that. But
he explained that he said we're used to listening to our hometown announcers, which is probably true.
Right. Yes.
Okay, Gene, a wealth of knowledge there, and the next show we do is going to be all Cleveland Indians, and I'm going to pick your brain on that. Okay, that's this part one of Around the Town with Chuck and Gene Winters.